It looks like we're live.
Oh,
Oh, cool. All right. Oh, there we go. Let me get out of this. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brad Sizemore here with Joe MANDUCK. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing pretty well, Brad. How are you doing this fine evening?
Good. Does that sound good? All right. We're going to be talking
Oh,
about I was going to do the thing from the Warriors come out and play, but it didn't sound
come out and
uh
play.
we're going to be talking about Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors by Sergei Parajanov, a film from 1965, shot in Ukrainian, um, filmed in Ukraine. So I'm gonna give a basic rundown, and then we can go with our normal format there. By the way, anybody who's watching, if you have any questions or comments, we should be able to see them in the live chat. So you can put that in there, and I'll be able to see that. So Shadow of Forgotten Ancestors is often called a Ukrainian or Carpathian Romeo and Juliet type story. It's about two, we can call them star-crossed lovers or ill-fated lovers, Ivan and Marichka, and they are from two families that are feuding. In fact, Marichka's father kills Ivan after a run-in they have during the liturgy in church. And so the families have this hatred for each other. But as children, Ivan and Marichka grow very fond of each other, and eventually they fall in love. Um, but while they're still young, before they're able to um, really enjoy their time together. Um, and I won't give away too much right now, but the Ivan has to go off to work as a shepherd in the mountains, and while he's gone, Marichka has a tragic fall to her death, and Ivan, of course, is heartbroken. Eventually, he marries another woman, um, and but he never, there was woman Polana, he's never able to give her the love that he should because he pines for Marichka. So this becomes like a ghost story because he's haunted by Marichka and he cannot be the husband that he should to Polana. And eventually she takes up with a kind of folk sorcerer named Yorko. And Ivan finds out about this, and then the story comes to its climax where Ivan is goes to his death. So that's the basics of Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. It is based on a book by Mikhailo Kotsubinsky that was written in the early 20th century. So Parajanov based his movie pretty closely on this. In fact, the actual house of the real Ivan is used in the film. Um,
Oh,
and so he shot in the village there, or what they say is the house of Ivan there. In the village. And so this is shot in a Ukrainian village among a certain ethnic people called the Hutsuls. So the movie's actually in Hutsul dialect, and maybe we'll get into that. And so the movie is remarkable for a lot of things, but that's one of them. Shot during the Soviet era, but not in Russian, in Ukrainian, in fact, in this regional dialect of Ukrainian. So that's a basic introduction to Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. And Joe, I picked this movie to talk about because um, I we've talked before about Tarkovsky and the love I have for Russian cinema, especially with Andrei with Tarkovsky. But I wanted to talk about Parajanov first, who was actually influenced heavily by Tarkovsky and is probably more widely known for his color of pomegranates uh,
mm-hmm.
throughout the world, which is another remarkable film, but that's not as accessible to everyone, I would say. But they're both cinematographically the cinematography, excuse me, is profound, and they both are kind of like poetic in the way that imagery is used, and certainly here with the folk songs and even the way the dialect is lilting, etc. So that's an introduction to Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. Um, so I'll go over to you, Joe. You want to give me your opening thoughts? We hadn't really talked about what you thought. We didn't talk about this at all, really. So
Nope.
You want to get into what any opening thoughts you had?
Let's see. Opening thoughts. Excuse me. Yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, I know very little about this. You and I had briefly had a conversation. I think maybe I checked out like the opening scene a little while ago, and I was automatically struck instantly by just how different the filming techniques are in terms of the cinematography. I think that just overall, I will admit that some of it I found kind of hard to get into. I think because of the style, it's almost like you said, there's kind of this. I like how you use the term as poetic, like some
Mhm.
it's got that avant-garde. We're trying to almost go through like this visual poetry, and I saw their little snippets about folktale backgrounds, so you really get the sense it feels very folksy. And the thing that stood out the most to me because of that, I think, are the aspects that try to bring that to life. Say the imagery, the cinematography you mentioned, a lot of really cool shots. But even from the initial opening of the movie, well, tonally, thematically, I feel like there's something that's set up right away. I mean, number one, it starts with a death, actually. It starts with the death, right? Like right off the bat, within, I don't know, a minute or two in the movie, there's I believe it's Ivan's older brother. He gets crushed. He's like take chopping down wood, and the tree comes down and accident just it kills him right away. So and I was struck by the image of his brother, the older man, like is holding on to his arm, and he's almost stuck, almost like he's literally being pulled down by death and by tragedy. And literally it sets the tone right away for, okay, this is a preview for what this poor guy's life is going to be, because spoilers, the movie is misery. The movie is a lot of misery for the little narrative that it does have, which maybe you could give me more insight of. I think that's the point. But along with that initial death scene, this is one thing we were talking about. I love how there's something about when you compare movies outside the US to anything that was made in the US around this time. Like you take your average movie from 1965, and I will admit, like I'm not an expert necessarily on all the films of that time, but there's just something. All of the films, because of the Hollywood studio system, it was all so desensitized. It's all really kind of like fluffy. They don't want to offend anybody. And then here we have somebody tragically getting killed, and just thinking about how really innovative the cinematography is, because it's almost got like this combination of this found footage almost quality documentary style, because it's kind of a grainy camera. They might even been using a different type of film stock over there, but it just looks lower budget. Like you've got him almost, the whole thing's almost over the
Yeah.
shoulder, and the camera's constantly moving to the point where honestly it might make you sick. But you literally see the POV of the tree come down, and that's not something that happened. You in the US, I feel like you just usually have a lot of static shots, like it's on a stage. We're still transitioning decades after the 20s. It's and I just think that's cool. And whether it's, I guess, Ukrainian or Japanese, I feel like they experimented a lot with just the visual style more. And so instantly, that's what I was struck with. And we'll talk more about that, other things I noticed in the movie. But those are two things that struck to me: the cinematography and just the tone of the movie. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, like you said, play back on that, it's very poetic. So there's a lot of it that is for the viewer, I think, is interpretive. Um, the use of, like you said, it's almost disorienting sometimes. It can be a little disorienting, and the use of sound. So you'll have these jarring sounds. There are some folk instruments. So I did read a little bit about this where he actually brought in all like authentic instruments from that region. Some of them were, I forget the
Mhm.
name of the instrument. It's so huge it was difficult to transport. And so you'll have these bursts of sound with the image. Um, but yeah, like you said, that opening scene where he's out there with his brother, and and the way that it looks right away, like there's a surrealist quality to it immediately, that it's the stage is almost it's almost it gives a little bit of a character like a stage play when it's certain parts of it. And then, like you said, it's like a handheld quality to it, like a handheld camera almost. And then like the tree falling right on him. So it starts off with a death, And then you go to the village, and
Hmm.
there's a guy wearing a death mask. There's things like that. They go into the church, and he asked about the devil being in the devil's not in the church, but they go outside and fight with these little axes, and so when the novel was written by someone familiar with that, and so when Parajanov goes there, like he was talking, it's pretty authentic, I guess,
Hmm.
from the way they did that. Um, but yeah, you get these sudden close-ups. This it can be a little disconcerting or a little disorienting. I could see it some of the shots, but I really the music. It's an odd movie. I remember the first. I've probably seen it through like 3 times. So the first time, it's a little difficult. It was a little difficult to follow what was going on, and it's almost like in certain scenes the music will lead the way, pull you from one scene into the next, like you and you pull in. Um, but I mean, the shots, like you said, compared to American movies and from the same era, and I like the way you brought that up. It's just so it's like a breath of fresh air. And I don't know if it is Japanese. I know the French cinema used some of that, so maybe. Um, in fact, when he released this, there was some controversy because, like I said, this is the Soviet, so all their movies would be in Russian. And he had
Hmm.
this not only Ukrainian, but in this dialogue called Hutsul. And I guess the authorities they really favor this kind of Soviet realism, they would call it. But this movie is so surreal. And with the way the sound is and the language, the dialogue and the sound and the movement, they wanted him to dub it in the Russian, but it's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible to like dub the movie in the Russian. I've seen, by the way, it's funny because I've seen on Mosfilm or different things. I've seen some movies that were dubbed in the Russian, which is annoying. I hate it because it'll be like you'll hear the German or whatever, and then there's like a guy. It's always the same sounding guy, whatever, and, like, over the top. I don't know why they did that. I like Russian movies, but there's a lot of that.
Huh.
Um, yeah, but yeah, it is a pretty to talk about what you're saying with the death of his brother. It is a pretty sad movie. It's a tragedy for sure.
Hmm.
Um, what did you think about the so the, you had the Ivan and Marichka characters. Um,
Hmm.
what did you think about the acting overall?
The acting kind of, I would say it was very. It felt like a lot of things were a little either a little understated, like a lot of the background characters, like they were trying to almost make you seem like the background characters are creating this documentary feel where I know obviously it's supposed to be filmed at a different time, but with the costumes, with the music, that I don't know much about it, but it seemed kind of authentic. It really did feel like that was almost like the background, trying to make us feel like we were there. As far as the main performances, it's that's an interesting question because there's not a ton of dialogue.
Mm,
It's
right.
mostly just very expressive. I'm tempted to say it was over the top, but not really. It was just really, I think, trying to create this really naturalistic feeling, trying to very emotive, a little theatrical perhaps, but like really you just reading on people's faces, the shock or the anger, the misery. You have a lot of people like Ivan looking forlorn, and I know that his wife, she just seemed very happy, and the way it's filmed. I really love the one scene towards the end of the movie where spoilers, somebody dies. I mean, they kind of like break it up with different like pieces of the segments almost. And I loved how I really would love to know how they filmed it, where they almost have him kind of haunted, like you said, by the memory of his
Mhm.
wife, and she's it's almost like they're being pulled on a dolly. Like it feels like they're gliding through the woods, and then they've got like almost this. I think they must have like crunched together a bunch of trees to make it seem like they're like twisting around, like very disorienting, dizzying, but cool. And she seems so happy and gleeful. So I don't really think it's hard for me to judge foreign acting sometimes,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was over the top. I don't think it was bad. But it's like it's kind of like with the writing, it's like it's almost like they didn't have much to work with, and the directing style was like, okay, I want you to emote while trying to be understated without really expressing a lot with dialogue or intonation and whatnot. But then you'll get other versions where it's like, axe to the face. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like a sudden burst of emotion that seems almost ridiculous, but it's usually so quick. So I don't know. The acting, I guess I liked the acting. I appreciate it. I liked how quiet the movie was, and it kind of tried to let the scenery and the
Yeah.
costumes and the
I
camera work
I
speak
know
for
what
itself.
you
It's like
mean. I
the
know what you
acting.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not because I was watching. I'm like, I wonder if people because act it's not overacting and it's not really like it's the actors are like part of the scenery because he uses the background so much. He uses nature so much. Um, but it's a little. I think it's a little
Hmm.
seems a little off some maybe to American viewers. I could see how um that style of acting would be off. And with the Joey there looks like he froze a little bit. All right, here we go.
But I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah,
You
cool.
froze on. I'm still here.
Yeah, I was gonna say like when you go from the church, like that beginning scene in the church, and then they go outside to fight, and like some of the camera
Hmm.
work there too, and it happens in a couple other places. It's almost like it's sudden movements. It's almost looking like like the cameraman's in the fight, like he's fighting someone. Like the camera,
Yeah,
like it
yeah.
tripping, like he tripped and fell, and like looked up, and then it's all of a sudden the guy's dead. And there's all this festivities going around in the background. I really like it has a I don't know, it sounds kind of trite, I guess, say dreamlike quality, but it's very like it's almost like because
I wanted to ask you.
yeah,
I'm sorry to interject 'cause with what
yeah,
you said because you reminded me with the fight scene.
uh,
I felt kind of conflicted when I was watching it, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion on it. There's a part of me that want. Do you know if this has a remaster or anything somewhere?
um, I
Any
don't
idea?
know. No, I'm not sure.
Okay, because I part of me wants to say like it would be nice to see if this movie could get like the Criterion collection, so to speak, where it's like it gets puffed out and cleaned up because I want it could really make things pop. Or do you think that would take away from it because it seems kind of grounded
Yeah,
and very
that's a good
grainy,
point.
low budget? Like, do you think that adds to the movie to the sort of dreamlike stuff, or do you think that would take away if it was too cleaned up?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I bet. Well, first of all, I bet you there is well, I bet you Criterion did. I mean, I've only ever seen this movie on YouTube. So
Uh-huh.
that's it. But yeah, I bet you they did. I don't know. That could be. Um, I don't know. I'm used to it the way it is. So maybe
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
But I
then
could see. I
I
don't
just
know.
wanted to make a note. Well, you noted the how the looks like the cameraman's in the fight.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's really cool that it is trying to be very avant-garde and very deliberate in the shots, and it is artistic in its attempts. But I appreciate how you can tell there's some super low budget things that I think kind of add to it. It reminds me a bit of like an Argento Giallo kind of movie or something where like we got the splat of blood on the camera, which
Oh
clearly looks
yeah.
very fake. It looks
Yeah.
fake,
Yeah.
but I think that adds to it mostly because think about it. How many American movies in the 60s had like, that much gore technically, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
bold. I can see why the
Yeah.
Soviets might be like, oh no, this is going against the restrictive rules of our scripts and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, apparently, well, that's a good point because from what I read, so everything has to go through the proper channels, through the authorities. You're going to release this film, and
Mhm.
from what I read, they wanted to suppress it, but it was an anniversary or centenary or something of the author's life, the one who wrote
Mhm.
Shadows, and so they're like, I read somewhere they said, well, we'll let him premiere it once, and then we'll get rid of it. And then they suppressed Parajanov, and you had writers like Tarkovsky and other people writing to the authorities like, "This is a tragedy. This man's a genius. Like
Mhm.
keeping this back." So this movie was also a big deal culturally because it was Ukrainian. It wasn't Russian. It was definitively Ukrainian, and it left it like I said, it's using a different style, Ukrainian dialect. And apparently, this was a time anyway that you had some Ukrainian I don't know, nationalistic, more fervor, more Ukrainian pride coming through in this. So
Mhm.
people really latched onto this movie, and I was listening to a documentary by a Ukrainian man. He was talking about the importance of this film.
Mhm.
So apparently, I wasn't aware that there's a long history of cinema in Ukraine, going back to the very early days of like moving films, and it always has it has a kind of unique style, I guess. And so Parajanov, who is he's Armenian, born in Georgia, but he's working here in Ukraine, and
Wow.
he's trying to, I guess, adapt this. There's a template that already exists, and I posted earlier, you saw the trailer for Ivan's Childhood from Tarkovsky. And
Mhm.
I guess I put that up because Parajanov watched that because he thought he was doing some film student stuff and it sucked. And he watched that and he's like, yeah, this is what I need to do. Um,
Mhm.
this is how I have to do this. This has inspired him how he's going to make films. And so there's a lot there. I wonder if, because I haven't seen any other. I can think of maybe there's another Ukrainian film, a little more campy from the similar era. That's kind of like a horror movie. It's kind of cool. Um,
Ooh.
and I'm trying to remember the name. I'll think of the name again. I'll send it later if I can't remember now. Maybe we could actually talk about that at some point.
Okay.
It's fun. It's
Sure.
funny though too. It's got fairy tale stuff. It's got a lot of humor in it. It's a
Hmm.
little scary, but in a cheesy way, and it's based on like a Ukrainian folk tale about a certain monster. Um,
Cool.
But I noticed some of those same kind of thing, like the sudden immediacy of a shot where you zoom in and then you zoom
Mhm.
out, and like putting stuff on the lens, like you mentioned the blood. I
Mhm.
think at some parts water gets on, the rain falls on the camera lens. If I remember correctly, or maybe it's not this
Ooh.
movie. So I'm trying to remember, but I think in the rain, there's rain hitting it. Um,
Uh, there. I think you're making me think now. Of just there are some really really cool shots in the movie, like how he frames certain things. I forget, a lot of it is very focused on, of course, church services. That does come up a lot, and I remember there's one point towards the end where I forget if the lady has, it's like a suitcase, or it's like it blocks so that it takes up like two or three, uh, it's like a chest of some of the shot, like, and then Ivan's walking in, right, and he looks so tiny, and you're thinking, okay, this looks like, okay, this is just kind of, they shoved the camera over here and it's kind of janky, but no, it's an interesting shot, and then comes down. It looks like something Hitchcock would do, and then it just reveals the whole room, and you see everybody. And I feel like in terms of film language, just he feels much smaller now and constrained towards the end of his life. So there's a lot going on there. I'm just gonna list them off now because there was one, like you said, the quick direct shots. I remember really one really cool effect where that he immediately cuts to a tree, like this really tall narrow tree, and then it's on fire.
oh
Okay,
yeah.
but the fact that he manages to keep the fire so contained to the main trunk of the tree, it almost looks like an artificial special effect, but it can't be. So, however they did the pyrotechnics on that was very striking. I love the scene where with the what is it? The different branches are all intertwined and everything's in red, right? Jarringly red,
Oh
like it's
yeah,
the
yeah,
blood,
yeah.
like how he got the red contrast or dye or whatever he did to the branches. That looked really beautiful. That struck out. And do you remember the scene where he's looking into the river, and it's all completely, just the entire screen looks like it's on water, and
Hmm.
you can't really tell from his reflection. I couldn't tell, like, are we looking at it from a certain angle, like what direction is he coming up from, like how they shot it. I don't know how they shot it because it
Yeah,
looks like he is almost in water,
in the water. Yeah.
which, yeah, and I think, yeah, you're right. There's just a lot of these little things pop, even though it was kind of a little grainy and a little bit kind of super grounded and rough in some ways. Whenever there was an image, a composition that just really struck, you can tell time and thought was put into it. And that's the thing I think that it conveys. And it makes me wonder, like, that sticks out more. Um, I don't know. I do think that's really interesting. And I could definitely tell there could be some Tartovsky influence there, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's almost like that. the shot with the water, like you said, it's just it, there's an other, I don't know, otherworldly quality. Like I think I put in the title, this ethereal quality. So he's like already, it's like he's already passing over into like the spirit world or whatever. There's a
Hmm.
lot in this movie. Is maybe touch on this, just talking about the cultural background again, and this you can see
Hmm.
this in the shot. So there's a lot of different strains of spirituality that come in. So of course they're Christians there. I'm guessing they're Orthodox Christians there. So that's that. But
Hmm.
then you have two kinds of like folk paganism going on. You have like a benign kind of like folk magic or folklore stuff, folk stuff going on. And then you get the sorcerer there. Um, and you see this, one part with the masks and different things, and the idea that somebody's soul would come back as an animal, and then she haunts
Hmm.
him. That speaking of shots, one of my favorite parts is when he's there and she's at Marichka's at the window when she's looking in, her ghost, yeah, looking in, and he's so haunted by her, like it's implied, I believe, that he can't really consummate his marriage to Polana, like he can't really be romantic with her. She's obviously frustrated by that. Yeah,
There was a question I wanted to ask you because I thought this was really interesting. Because you're right, a lot of it's interpretive. His second wife, I don't want to mispronounce her name, Paulung, whatever that name was.
yeah,
Um, she she I think you pointed out how like he is so overcome by all the sadness in his life, right? Brother, father, first wife all died. So he has the second wife and he doesn't really give her the attention. He's kind of very cold and distant to her, right? So you said she gets involved in, I guess, this pagan sort of black magic stuff with the sorceress. And I thought it was really interesting because she's praying, she prays a lot, and she's like, okay, I would like, to have a child. I want to, I want us to build a family, the new life in the family, and I want my husband to be happy. Like she wants so badly for his happiness, but she's driven away and she goes in to perform the rituals. But I thought it was really interesting, and I really wanted to pick your brain on this. She's performing the ceremony, but as she's doing so, she is still praying,
hmm
so it's like she's almost trying to hedge her bets, and however I
yeah,
can do this from all the different gods or magic, whatever, please, I want something. It's almost like she's framed kind of like a villain because he's driven away when he sees her kind of going off the path. Like that's the final thing that does him in, but it's also kind of his fault. But then again,
yeah,
look what happened to him. So I was kind of curious your thoughts on the morality and the how we're supposed to feel about her and him. With that was a very interesting detail I noticed with dialogue wise. And I don't know as
yeah.
much about the region, but I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, she's certainly Polana she's an unwitting victim. So she's not a bad person, of course, like you said. She wants what's best for her husband. He's just broken by this
Hmm.
death of Marichka. He can't recover from it. And eventually like drive like I said, by the end, like he's driven, he's a ghost of himself even before he died, even before before the end. I think too, when you see there with that in I don't think this is just unique to the Carpathians there, but you have a lot of this kind of thing. I think happens in like rural Mexico and other places where you have Christianity or Catholicism is like the
Hmm.
overarching thing, but then you get these pagan beliefs or these folk. I think folk sounds better. I mean pagan, whatever, but like folk beliefs that can start out innocently
Sounds
enough.
nicer.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, there's no ill will there. She's just, she's forlorn because she's in a very difficult situation. She's in a yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, and then
You could
it
say that. No.
anyway, it
Oh,
goes if it
go ahead.
finally, like, I think the anguish manifests itself at the end in this sorcerer, like um
Yeah.
the blood feud between the family. You remember his mother's like, may their household be empty like mine's
Oh,
empty, may
Oh,
You know,
yeah, his that scene with his mother, dude.
Mhm.
She lost everybody. That was a subtle thing too. Like, okay, you think, oh yeah, her son's leaving to get married. She's not happy about it, but she knows it's
Yeah,
got to happen. Of course, the dad got murdered with an axe to the face. But then also you see her praying, oh, like, oh yeah, for my son and my daughter, like all these
they're
kids
all
that she
gone.
must have lost somehow. Like, and I'm
Yeah,
like, man, like, you know what? No wonder he feels bad. He got to leave mom, man. Like, just talk about
yeah,
another broken person, you know?
it is. Yeah, like the brother at the beginning, I think his name's Oleg or Alexo, whatever. The tree falls on him. Dad gets axed to the face. Yvonne takes off. You
Like,
know,
Brad, I applaud the movie. Like, I was laughing a bit, but like, it's almost absurd the level of tragedy. It's like Bo is afraid all over again.
oh my
Yvonne is
gosh.
afraid.
Yeah.
No, but like, I wanted to ask you. Well, I have a two-part question to ask you because, like, when it comes to this particular film, like I sometimes do think maybe I'd have to watch it again sometime, but like you know how sometimes there is like a general message that the story is trying to convey, or at the very least a theme to explore.
Mhm.
I would venture to say, while the director might be trying to find some beauty in these things, this movie is pretty bleak. And I do feel like it is etched in misery. I was kind of hoping for like, oh, like maybe there's some kind of slightly hopeful feeling towards the end, because like it's also clear too that it was like very clearly that faith and spirituality is just interweaving, but it's almost like there's this disconnect, or the guy feels like it's oppressing him because you got people in the background and you got the pagan stuff. It's all like, oh, people are dancing around at his funeral, you know, like they don't care. There's
Yeah.
debauchery. It's very like, I don't know. It's not the most uplifting film,
No,
even though
no,
it
it's
does have beauty. I was just like, man, like poor Yvonne, man. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, he looks rough too.
So
He's not doing too hot.
and his face is just, you know, he
Yeah.
looks up and he's just like,
Bro, you doing all right?
this is his expression the whole
Yeah.
movie. Just,
You okay?
hey,
Like
buddy, you all right,
you
man?
need some more
You
iron
need
in your diet or something. He looked rough again. Uh
yeah, you need to take like wash your face or something, you
I
know.
know it's fake. The dirt. The dirty fate. Like we know there's a river there
Hey,
because your girlfriend fell
Brad,
in
yeah,
it.
there's a
But
beautiful river there. He almost drinks out of it. And Brad, you could say that he's down in the dirt. Huh? Huh?
yeah.
Huh? No? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here all week. Oh man.
I think
Down in the muck.
um what was I gonna say? Oh, about the despair or the bleakness of it. I wonder, I was
Yes.
just thinking while you're talking. So Parajanov is Armenian and
Hmm.
this is Ukrainian. I was just looking at some notes I have here. I guess his wife was Ukrainian, Parajanov's wife.
Okay.
And so that's how I got there. When you like with the Armenians and the Ukrainians, I mean, those are two people that were had it pretty bad time, early 20th century. Pretty both people got
Hmm.
genocided. I mean, there was genocides against both people. The Turks genocided the Armenians, and then the Russians with the Ukrainians under
Hmm.
Stalin. So it's almost like that. That's like a ghost hanging over top. It's like the bleakness. Even though this is people
Ooh.
that lived before, these are the ancestors. Yeah,
Ooh. Shit. Ooh. You just answered maybe a question. Here's a take. Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. So it's almost like this is a reminder of the issues of the past that maybe keep circulating. And you're saying this is a story from etched in their folk past, but you're right. Maybe it's a commentary on all the oppression and the genocide, and it's like a
yeah,
reflection of that. Ah, okay, okay, gotcha.
yeah. I think you know maybe, but we know when the movie came out, like this was something that Ukrainians really latched onto, and it was like make it is. You know, it is a dark movie, and in many ways, it's a you know has a lot of despair in it. And this is a people that are uh, subjugated, to say the least. Not really able to express themselves in their own way. Um, and so I maybe that comes through with that, like with Parajanov already, like I said, being Armenian. Um, you with those kinds of people, with Armenians, with Ukrainians. It was this way for a long time with the Irish. Like they've been like oppressed for there's a stronger, older brother or older cousin over here that keeps, holding you down. And so like yeah, shadows of forgotten ancestors. I like that one scene.
Um,
They're all lined up dancing. Um, they're all, bouncing around there. It's just almost
against
like
the
you're
building.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it's like it's both like I don't know, it's funny, but it's also like it's a little creepy. Like, they're like ghosts.
It's all.
You're looking at
Mhm.
these ghosts there. Like you can imagine going there and like you're walking through and like you see this scene because they're just there. It's a little too fast, the movement, a little erratic, and like they're all done up. They're completely done up in the dress. It's like a lot. Um, yeah. And you see that throughout. Like I know it's cold, but I mean, like a lot of the people, like they're like the ethnic garb is really like laid on thick. Like you're reminded over and over again, like you're in a different kind of place. Um, even
Mhm.
for than the Russians or whoever. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, I agree. It almost seems like when there are these constant parties and ceremonies and festivities and the way the camera's moving around, you're right. It's almost like a blur, and everybody's got these really. I'm guessing they're authentic. It does really feel like you're getting a snapshot at a different time and place, but to somebody that's I guess a foreigner like me that I'm not as familiar with it, it does seem almost strange. So it's interesting to say that this probably did resonate so much with the Ukrainians and was in touch with a lot of traditions and feelings of the people over time. But yeah, to me, it does feel almost off-putting, and maybe a lot of people were out of touch with it, and this is like a reminder of it. So I could see that, and also some of the little folk tales that they almost talk about. The one guy, I guess, is mute, and the other person's talking to him about the wind says one thing. They're almost reciting little folk tales to each other, and like that one guy that's just covered in soot, and he's got like this really almost deranged expression. Like it's not the most inviting atmosphere, and you've got these intimidating guys, that seem like they're really ready to fight at any moment, like with the slightest provocation. It's not very inviting. It is oppressive. It's bleak. It's a rough place to be, which I guess a lot of places in Eastern Europe maybe have that. So I could definitely see that being a reflection of this. Yeah, the costumes too, for sure. Yeah, I like that you brought up the costumes because the that scene I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if you know much about it because I don't know much about it, but the I don't know if this is necessarily it was necessarily a traditional thing. It must be, but there's the scene where the title card is Christmas. It's Christmas time, and then you said there's a little parade where they're all dressed up and like they've got like the
mhm.
soldiers that I guess are supposed to be like, nutcracker almost, but they look very deranged and everybody's got like these fearsome faces. They've got weird masks, and one guy straight up looks like a slasher movie villain. He looks like death. Like it does some parts of it
Mhm.
do have like this nightmarish heart. And I'm thinking, this is how they celebrate Christmas. Nothing traditionally Christian. No Santa Claus or anything like that. And I mean, obviously, different time, different place. But so maybe this is accurate. But the way it's shot, it's not meant to be like a wonderful celebration of love and community. It's a little unsettling. Just a little unsettling. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is definitely, um, it's definitely off. Um, what was I just thinking? It's yeah, those people are like in the Carpathians there, like known
Mhm,
to be that's known to be like a wild area. I mean,
mhm,
that's the extension. If you go all the way over, you go over to like Wallachia and Transylvania and all of that. So
mhm,
you see that in certain other places in Central and Eastern Europe where the folk dress, some of the pagan elements hang around, and it's often frightening. It's funny with like with Christmas, for instance, like you said. So you have, even in Germany and other places, you have Father Christmas or Santa Claus or whatever he's called, wherever he's at. But then you have like the Krampus figure or the Christmas the devil that comes and gets you. So it's certainly there. It's
Mhm.
almost like too. It's um like if you go into the woods too much or something, like you're going to die. Like if you go
Mhm.
out there, there's it's very spirit. The spirits are there. Like Alexo, his brother, gets crushed by the trees out there.
Mhm.
Marichka is climbing by the river. She's taken by the river. The tree, like you said, the tree on fire. So it's almost like the surrounding area is there's like a haunted quality to it.
Mhm.
And I thought something was interesting while you were talking. Like when they arrested, I just was reading this. When they arrested Parajanov, apparently over some trumped up
Mhm.
charges, Tarkovsky wrote a letter to the committee, to the Communist Party committee, and he wrote in there
Mhm.
that in the last 10 years, Parajanov has made only two films, Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors and The Color of Pomegranates. They have influenced cinema first in Ukraine, second in this country, and third in the world at large. Artistically, there are few people in
Mhm.
the entire world who could replace him. He is guilty, guilty of his solitude, and we are guilty of not thinking of him daily and failing to discover the significance of a master. And like, so apparently Tarkovsky
Wow.
saw in him like also like a profound solitude, which makes sense. It's like
Huh.
I wonder how much like of himself is in Yvonne character or that kind of solitude. Or if you look at
Mhm.
different film, but Color of Pomegranates, there's really no dialogue besides
Mhm.
from people saying some prayers or singing. Um
Mhm.
and there is like, like you said again, just it's kind of a horrific thing because you're not the mother loses her whole family, Yvonne loses Marichka. Paulina gets married, but then her husband is haunted by the ghost of his lost love, and it's like the shadows are there. So you have all these like these ghosts. Um, so yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is dark in that regard. Um, Yep.
Um. Hmm. Uh, well, I think I guess I wasn't super familiar with this director, and apparently he is loved definitely a lot by some circles, which is kind of cool when you see there's a great director that kind of likes somebody else and is inspired by them. Kind of makes you want to take another look at him. I was doing a teeny bit of research for this because I kind of wanted to see if I could understand more of the movie, yeah, so I looked up a little background, and I will say I saw some shots from Colors of Pomegranate, and I thought they looked really pretty and really striking. And I was kind of curious about that as well. And I was also interested because I'm like, okay, the costumes are elaborate. The way everything looks kind of almost like it's preserved, doll-like in some way. It's really bright and colorful, vivid. And I'm like, this looks kind of familiar to me. And the one video I was watching said that I guess this film, this director Sergey, he inspired some other directors, and one of them was Tarsem Singh. Are you familiar with Tarsem Singh?
No.
Tarsem Singh, this Colors of Pomegranate, I think, inspired the movie The Fall, and he did some other movies as well. But I think the movie I know him the best for is actually The Cell. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently, yeah. So Tarsem Singh directed that movie, and apparently he was really inspired by a lot of the visual style of this gentleman. So he definitely has some influence, and I think it is very striking and cool. I guess I kind of wanted to sort of ask you a question that I've been thinking about for a while. I noticed that you really are drawn to Russian films and of that ilk of that era. And I was curious, like, is there something specifically about Russian movies that does draw you in? Like, what is it about it that interests you about? You seem to like that, and I was just kind of curious
Mhm.
if there was a reason for that, or if you have an explanation. Like, what is it about some films like this that really resonates with Brad? If there
Yeah.
is anything, I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question because Um, well, when I talk about it, it makes me seem like I'm smarter than other people because I watch foreign.
That's true.
Yeah. If I said I like
That's
Roadhouse
good.
or
Everybody's
something,
got their little card.
if I like my favorite movie
Oh,
is
get out of here.
Roadhouse, then
Hey,
I'm not.
Road. No, no. Hey, Roadhouse, underrated classic. It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, what about
It's
this?
I. What? How does the line?
What if Parajanov directed
Pain.
Roadhouse? That'd be
He
sick.
should have redone it. Pain, don't hurt. Oh man, no. Roadhouse is pretty good. Roadhouse is
Yeah,
ridiculous, but it's
it
pretty
is
good.
ridiculously
No, I
like
would.
over the top.
I do think I was. Before you answer the big Russian question, I did. That was a great answer. Everyone's got their thing, and yes, that. Well, that's the thing I bring out to make myself seem smarter. That was good. Uh, that was really funny. Do you think that somebody should attempt to remake this movie at some point?
Hmm. Um, that would be cool. Like another somebody from that part of the world in America. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, sure, sure. Like, yeah, like a modern Ukrainian director or somebody. Let's say they had a slightly bigger budget and they just wanted to like flesh out the story a little bit, not even change that much, but just do a reinterpretation of it or something.
Yeah, I don't think
Because
that would be.
I was wondering, like, no.
I don't no no. I don't think that would be a bad idea necessarily. That might be cool because if it was, especially not that an American or Western European or whoever couldn't do it, but if you had somebody that was maybe Ukrainian or from Georgia or the a nearby country. This movie is like it's a relic of their culture, and so it's treated with respect. So if you could probably be sure anybody does it would handle it with respect, to a certain degree.
Hmm.
It would be, I mean, not exactly the same, but if you had an American, I would hope if for some reason they remade, I don't know, The Godfather or something, um,
Oh,
you would
oh.
respect the source material enough that like you wouldn't want to. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you would do it either.
Well,
Like, would you try to like be a clone of Parajanov, or would you just take the novel and do it yourself? Like, what? I don't know.
well, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things where if somebody, I don't know how these things exactly work over there, but like if some studio came and said, okay, we've got a script that came in, they want to redo it, you're being tasked with creating the movie. That's a great question. I feel like if you really respected it, you'd be like, well, I've got to do it justice and respect, but I can't just copy it because I got to try to add something new. So maybe they would add more dialogue, or they'd focus on more of one part of the story, or they'd add more weird effects and weird shots to make it more surreal. I don't know. You'd have to make it. You'd have to try. You'd have to try to use it to maybe comment on something more recent. I don't know. That would be
Yeah,
another interesting experiment, though, for sure.
how that would work. Yeah, no, that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but like if you had the right person do it, I don't know, for the right reasons. Like, yeah, you don't want to just copy something. I mean, you can't really do that. So it would be
Well,
interesting.
unless you're Gus Van Sant with Psycho, you could do that shot for shot.
Yeah. Is it? You
Yep.
could get in their mind. What was I going to say? Something stupid.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I had a joke. I forgot. No, the Russian
Shoot.
thing. I
Sorry.
think I started when I was 19. I started
Hmm.
training in Russian martial arts, and so
Ah.
in doing that, I came into contact with some Russians and Russian culture, and which I
Mm.
I, I liked a lot of things about it. And then I think the first um I saw Andrei Rublev at one point, or parts of it. And I was very intrigued by it. But also even just I remember watching some like newer Russian movies that I could find on YouTube, and I'm like, this is like I don't know. American movies for me, a lot of them are just like stale. I don't know, maybe just a different perspective.
Hmm.
And also being, like a lot of people, a fan of Russian literature like Dostoevsky, etc. When that kind of Russian thing comes through, whatever you want to call it, Russian spirit comes through, a connectivity to the earth, a certain kind of spirituality that while it, like for instance, if it is Christianity, though, it's Russian Christianity, so it's different.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of that resonates for me.
Hmm.
Um, and so just all those elements come together. And then for me, when you start um like just watching Tarkovsky, etc., the more I got into it, the more I'm like, oh, I want to dig a little deeper. And then I found Parajanov. I watched Color Pomegranates, which is completely, I would think like, I don't know why I like this because it's just scenes. It's an Armenian poet. He took I can't remember his name offhand, this the most famous Armenian poet, and just turned his poetry and his life into these very, very symbolic, allegorical scenes that are ripe with like speaking of Christianity, Armenian Christianity, poetry. You have you have beautiful, like I think I've talked this about before with Tarkovsky. You have it with Parajanov and some other ones, like using water a lot, using water that's coming. You're in the water, or
Hmm.
the water is flowing over things, and I appreciate that. Um, so I guess that's why. And then once I got into Russian films and just digging deeper, looking for some different things, I found some real turds too. So it's not like it's all it's not like it's all gold.
Well,
But yeah, there's some really cool stuff, and like there's a certain quality to the humor that's different. I think if there's humor in a movie, it's kind of different. Or um, yeah, so I guess it's just exposure to Russian culture and then digging a little deeper into it. But even like Eastern European stuff in general. Although I'm not really familiar with, I'm trying to think of like Polish or Hungarian films, or um, I know
mhm.
there's that one we talked about, but maybe save that for another time. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, but yeah. So to answer your question, I think that's what it is. Oh, I wore my shirt with it's got the little axe there, the axe to the face axe.
Ah, nice. Axe to the
Yeah.
face.
Axe to the face. And it's like that's the trailer for it, the American remake of Shadows of.
Yeah, well, they'll just focus on that one part to get people in it. Then the whole movie's just like people standing around chanting, like, "What? What was this? Why I came in for the axe fighting movie, not like this
Yeah.
meditative reflection on nature
Yeah.
and whatnot. Like, what is this? Like, what did they fooled me with the one axe scene? Yeah, uh, I don't know. I think it's it was striking though. It kind of lulls you into this weird sort of, you know, kind of almost a hypnotic stance, and then poof, something happens to kind of
Yeah.
shock you out of
I
it.
think too, like I think I also, because I knew I was going to talk about it with you, I wanted to see what you thought about this because we had talked about doing like
Hmm.
Stalker or something like that, which I kind of already know more about what you think. Um, so I was
Hmm.
curious, like this was a movie that is a little more out there, um, e-
Hmm.
a little different in the same vein, but a different feel to it. So I was curious what other people think about it. I think that's why I wanted to talk about it as well because it
Yeah.
is, it related to Tarkovsky, who I really love his movies, but taking it in a different way. So I think that's why I
Hmm.
wanted to watch Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It seemed almost like a lower budget kind of Tarkovsky almost.
the poor man's uh, Tarkovsky.
I was kind of thinking that a little bit as I was watching. Like, it's like I see kind of like there's elements here, but I feel like I've seen it done on a bigger scale, maybe a little more refined, perhaps. But then again, it's not exactly the same. Not exactly the same.
No,
I
no,
will say, definitely a lot more music. I feel like the little bit of Tchaikovsky's movies I've seen, there's almost no score.
no. You're right. Yeah,
It's
and I
all
think that
almost
was
ambient, actual
yeah.
sounds.
I think I also like
So
that about that, like the folk music. I appreciate the use of sound and the use of the folk instruments and the folk music in the movie. I also like how gosh darn like bright. I mean, I like that region of the world, like a lot of the folk dress and the way that they
Mhm.
paint their houses or do things because it could be very drab. I mean, but it's very vibrant with colors. Like, you got all these reds and greens and blues in the women's dress or the different things. The iconography in the
Oh
church is
yeah.
very, even though it's dark in there, it's very, very
Ooh,
vibrant. Um, yeah.
I got it. They should have. Somebody should go through this. Technicolor, Technicolor. Like
Oh
brighten it
yeah.
up even more. Bring up, make all those costumes pop. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe it would be cool to see like the cleaned up remastered where you really see um yeah, all the you really see all the colors pop up because it's really vibrant with that because I love some of the scenes where it's just flat all these colors and then the music's like and then they're moving and then they're like singing and so
Oh,
it's
make you sick. Oh.
yeah. They just vomit onto the screen.
I mean, there are a couple points where I had to look away, like, stop. I think I looked briefly because Roger Ebert, I guess, reviewed this way back in the day when he was younger. And he's like, oh man, like it was so new at the time. He's like, the camera in this film does not stop. It's a constant movement. He was
I
just
think
like,
I read
because
yeah, I
people
think I
just
read
didn't
that.
do that.
I
Like,
think I looked that
whoa.
up. Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
he,
Oh, what's
he
going
was
on
just like,
here?
whoa. Like,
Ebert, yeah.
like this is amazing. This is groundbreaking. You don't have to hold the camera in one spot. Whoa. Which is, hey, maybe that was pretty ahead of its time. So I thought that was pretty cool, especially for back then, pulling that
Yeah.
off.
Um, yeah, apparently even I was just looking, just speaking of the bleakness of some of that, like when he was arrested on some of these trumped up charges, one of the charges was incitement to suicide. Um
What?
uh
How so? How'd they figure that? What? Because of the
I don't
content of the
know,
movie?
like incitement because I guess the content, one of the charges was leaning towards homosexuality. I don't know where they're getting that. Business with art object. I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently they're just trying to make something stick, but maybe because of the romanticizing of the
Well,
death. I don't know.
I don't. If it went against, something about this on some level probably went against, the propaganda of the Soviets, and even if it's like hinted at that things aren't great, and you're putting it out there, just if it didn't get past the committee, basically, then they're gonna just make up stuff, Makes
Yeah.
sense. Police state and whatnot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of from what I read too, it's kind of like a minor miracle that it was able to make it out and be distributed the way it was. Um
Hmm.
Apparently there was a lot of people, a lot of intellectuals inside and outside the Soviet Union really pushing for this and then a lot of Ukrainians themselves um they had something on their hands and that they wanted to suppress but couldn't. Um yeah, and then Tarkovsky, I mean not Tarkovsky, Parajanov goes there. I from what I read, he lived in the village for like a year. He was there shooting this, and the house is still there. In fact, that scene with the yoke
Oh,
where
wow.
he marries Helena, and they put the yoke on the blindfold. That yoke is still hanging in the
Mhm.
house. You can go see it. Um,
Oh.
one interesting thing I did find was apparently everything was like authentic. The people there were like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is all good," except for the yoke thing. They were like, "We don't do that."
Huh.
But he kept it in because he liked the way it looked, I guess. But they're like, "That's not something we do." Um, but
I don't
he kept
care.
it in.
It looks
Yeah,
cool. I'm keeping it in. Directorial power. Yep.
yeah, pretty cool. So
Cool.
that's Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors,
Hmm.
1965.
That's a great title too. Really cool title.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like an album title. You know what I mean?
Well, honestly, I keep wanting to make a joke like, that's the version they should do. Somebody should do the Lovecraftian version, Shadows over Innsmouth,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Shadows over Ukraine, or Shadows over Carpathia. And then like, Cthulhu comes out. Rah!
That would be wild.
It would
A
be.
Parajanov Cthulhu thing.
Honestly, I feel like a Russian Lovecraftian movie could be pretty cool. Could be pretty cool
Yeah,
if it doesn't have something yet.
that'd be weird. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's about it, Joe.
yeah. I think so. I think we did it. Well, that
I
was
think.
cool. Now, got to figure out what we're gonna watch next. I guess.
Yeah. And looks like the live stream worked. So if we ever
Oh
want to do that
yeah,
in the future.
nice.
Yeah. And if anybody's there, I didn't get any questions, but we got a few viewers. So just well, at least it worked out. So um yeah.
Well, we can schedule it again. Some. This is a good way to maybe get it onto your channel more, so I don't have to worry about editing it all the time. I guess.
Yeah, that's what I thought. We could just go right up and that way you would have one edited or live
Hmm.
stream or whatever. Did you know what you want to watch or you want to keep that a secret or
Oh, I have no idea. I'll have to think about that. Did you want to do some of those movies Nate was mentioning from that Catholic list, or
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Well, yeah, I didn't get all
You,
the way
you did.
through, but there's some on there that I've seen that are good, and then there's some
Mhm.
I would like to see. So, is that going to be with Nate come on and do that?
I, I I would think so. If he wanted to do stuff from that list, I think he was seemed like he was interested. That's probably why he asked. So I don't know. Maybe I'll pick something from that list, or maybe I'll come up with something else. You picked such an odd artsy film. I feel like I almost should try to do one, but I don't know. It depends. I have no idea. I'd
Ghostbusters
have to.
2?
No, no. No. I don't. Believe it or not, I'm not a huge Ghostbusters fan. Like I like it, but no.
Really?
Why Ghostbusters 2? That's
Yeah.
random. Ghostbuster
I don't know. I
an
just young to
obscure film
something.
like
Yeah, that's
Ghostbusters
what's
2.
supposed to still. No, one thing I did see on the list, but I don't know it'd be I don't know if you ever saw the silent film The Passion of Saint Joan of Arc. Um
No, I never have actually.
That's
No.
really I yeah, I really like that one then because that's I first read about it before I watched it because apparently it's like one of the greatest ever acting the woman I'm drawing a blank on her name, but there's no
Mhm.
it's a silent film, but just what she does with her
Mhm.
face and her expressions is like and if you know what happened to Joan of Arc, like that's something worth looking at. I don't if you'd ever want to talk about it, but
Huh.
it's
Okay.
an intense movie too for being a silent film. But I definitely saw some other ones on there. So if you wanted to do something from that, um, that would be cool. I'd
Uh,
have to look at the list
yeah.
again.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it. I don't know. I'll have to ponder and I'll get back to you when I think of something.
All right, cool.
All right. Well, sounds good, Brad. We got it up there. Shout out to Forgotten Ancestors, and I'll see you later.
See ya, Joe. And let's get
Very,
out
very
this.
well. All right. I'll be leaving.
All right, cool.
Night, buddy.
All right, see you, Joe.